For Northern Ireland, Wales and England, though, it will be a largely dry day. Some sunshine, particularly across the south east, generally hazier skies for parts of Northern England, Wales and Northern Ireland, but temperatures climbing towards 23 degrees Celsius. Into Sunday, the rain across Scotland will gradually clear its way northwards. Still some heavy outbursts across initially northern areas, eventually reaching the Northern Isles later on. But again, for Northern Ireland, Wales and England, a largely dry day. This time, the rest of the sunshine off towards the southwest. Eastern areas may stay that bit cloudier. Further rain into parts of the northwest as we head towards the middle part of the week as well. Bye-bye.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Dewbs and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock and I'm Michelle Dewberry. Coming up tonight, the Labour Party absolutely smashed the SNP in the Rutherglen and Hamilton West by-election over in Scotland. What do you make to this? Keir Starmer basically says it is a sign that Labour can win everywhere. Is it? You tell me. And get this right, speaking of Labour, one of their ideas is to have supervised toothbrushing at primary schools. You did actually hear that correct. Your child will be supervised brushing their teeth by the teachers. Please answer me this question. Where is the line between a teacher and a parent? What on earth is going on? And Second Homes, a village in Norfolk, has become the latest hotspot to vote to ban second home ownership. What do you reckon to this? Do you agree that communities should have the power to do that? Or should it be a free-for-all? Anyone can buy and sell whatever property they want. And tonight, you know the drill on a Friday, we opened Dewberry Tavern. We have a cheeky drink, and joining me tonight is an absolute legend, John Cleese. Yes, and I want to put your questions to him. So if you've got any questions, get in touch. We've got it all to come and more. But first up, let's grab tonight's latest headlines.
Michelle, thank you very much, and good evening. This is the latest. A man has been remanded in custody over an alleged plot to kidnap and kill TV presenter Holly Willoughby. GB News reporter Lisa Hartle has been outside court in Chelmsford.
36-year-old Gavin Plum appeared at Chelmsford Magistrates Court this afternoon. The shopping centre security guard from Harlow in Essex has been charged with soliciting a man named David Nelson to commit murder and incitement to commit kidnap between the 2nd and the 5th of October. Plum is accused of planning to assemble a kidnap and restraint kit and encouraging a third party to travel to the UK to carry out the alleged offences. He was remanded in custody and ordered to appear on the 3rd of November at Chelmsford Crown Court.
Labour's describing its Rutherglen and Hamilton West by-election win as a seismic victory. Michael Shanks took the seat with 58% of the vote, more than double that of the SNP's Katie Loudon. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says Scotland is key to securing a majority at the next general election.
I've been determined from the moment I took over as leader of the Labour Party to take us from one of the worst defeats since the 1930s for us to a general election victory, and that's why we've worked so hard to change the Labour Party. I've always said the route to that general election runs through Scotland, and that is because I know how strongly so many people in Scotland want change, and I want to, if we're elected in to serve, I want to be the Prime Minister for the whole of the United Kingdom, not just of the United Kingdom. So it matters hugely that we succeed here in Scotland.
Now, a key supporter of the Just Stop Oil protest group says he's redirecting his funding to a youth voting campaign. Green energy industrialist Dale Vince says he's given more than £340,000 since the group's foundation. But he says under the current government, protest cannot work and warns further disruption may prove counterproductive. Mr Vince is instead supporting a new cause aimed at encouraging young people to vote. Just Stop Oil says it will continue its campaign of civil resistance. Former First Minister and current Alba Party leader Alex Salmond says Humza Yousaf has days to save his job after the by-election defeat. Scotland's First Minister says the SNP needs time to reflect on the result.
The SNP, we didn't do enough. We know that there was contextual factors. Margaret Ferrier's reckless actions, the police investigation, of course. But we've got to reflect, I've got to reflect, the party has to ensure we've got a good campaign machine behind us, but also that we're inspiring people with a message. We clearly got a message from the voters of Rutherglen and Hamilton West that the SNP has lost some trust in that seat. We've got to make sure we regain it.
The Green Party has promised to deliver warm homes and further protection for renters. The party, which currently has one Member of Parliament, has begun its party conference in Brighton today. Its co-leaders, Adrian Ramsey and Carla Denyer, confirmed the party will be seeking to get 4 MPs elected. They set out their plans for homes.
Every home should be properly insulated and free from damp and mould. We'd give renters the legal right to demand this from their landlords.
Now, a Conservative councillor has called for the Home Secretary's resignation over the handling of RAF Scampton. The government is accused of ignoring a legal order to stop converting the former airbase into a migrant camp to house 2,000 people. The Home Office says it's confident the project meets planning requirements, but Councillor Roger Patterson described the department as liars. Police and private companies are being urged to stop using facial recognition surveillance. A group of 65 MPs and peers backing a Big Brother Watch campaign are calling for change. Police have used live facial recognition software at large-scale public events such as the King's coronation. The group says it's concerned about human rights, the potential for discrimination and a lack of public mandate. And finally, house prices fell slightly last month but proved more resilient than analysts had expected. Higher mortgage rates were expected to fuel a sharp decline, but they only fell by 0.4%. Halifax says on a month-on-month basis, prices have dropped for 6 months in a row, with the average home now costing £280,000. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio, and now on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's back to Michelle. Thanks for that, Tatiana. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock. Conservative life peer in the House of Lords, Daniel Moylan. Alongside me, as is the trade unionist, Paul Embry. Good evening, everybody.
Evening, Michelle.
Hope you are all well. I was about to call you my Friday regular. You are that now, aren't you?
I think I probably am, yeah.
Yes.
I've been turning up for about a year on a
It's because
Friday
there's a cost of living crisis in yours that on a Friday gets a free beer. I think that's the draw on a Friday.
It's the best pub around the Dewbs Tavern on
It
Friday
is,
night,
it is. And anyway, you tee up the Dewbs Tavern nicely because Dewberry Tavern does indeed open on Friday, just before the end of the programme. And tonight, I've got a very special guest keeping me company for a crafty pint. I've got the comedy legend, none other than John Cleese. So I want to put some of your questions to him. So get in touch with me all the usual ways, not just about that, but all of the topics. I've got a packed programme for you tonight. GB Views at gbnews.com is, of course, how you get hold of me. If Twitter or X or whatever it is these days is your thing, at GB News is how you get hold of me. But, of course, the big story dominating the airwaves tonight is the fact that Labour have indeed won that by-election up in Scotland, Rutherglen and Hamilton West, and they're absolutely smacked the SNP. They got about 58% of the vote. A lot of people talking here because it was a swing of about 20%, a huge swing. You can see the votes there. Interestingly enough, the turnout, there was only a turnout of 37.19%, but you can see the massive difference there between Labour and, of course, the SNP. You're talking 18,000 to 8,000 there or thereabouts for those that are listening, not watching. In fact, actually, no. I shall start with you. Keir Starmer, absolutely beside himself with joy at the moment, saying that this is obviously seismic. It's a shape of things to come. He reckons that it proves that Labour can win anywhere. I was listening to a couple of pollsters earlier on saying that if the general election follows the same swing, you'll see potentially 40 seats up in Scotland for Labour. What do you make to it all?
I think by-elections generally are not great barometers when it comes to general elections. There are lots of variables. There was a lot of tactical voting going on here. Clearly, the Labour Party will crow about it, and they've got every right to. They've done well. It's a spectacular result. And
why do you say they and not we? I thought that you was Labour through and through.
Well, I am, but I like to maintain an air of impartiality on your show, Michelle. OK, right. But listen, I'll nail my colours to the mast. Yeah, we should crow about it because we've got a good result up there, although I'm certainly not a Starmerite, let me be clear about that. And the Labour Party clearly are the favourites for the next election, but I suspect, really, this is not a 1997 type moment. I think some people in the Labour Party are assuming it is, and we all knew, weeks and months and years, to be honest, in advance of the 97 election that the Labour Party was going to storm it because the Tories were a busted flush. I don't think this is quite the same thing. I don't think that the Labour Party at the moment have sealed the deal with the British electorate in the way that I think Tony Blair did well in advance of the 97 election. And I think when it comes to the election next year, probably what we're more likely to see is something like the Australian election last year, where the Labour Party won it, but not because they inspired anybody, but simply because they were seen as the least bad of a number of bad options, to be perfectly blunt. And the Labour Party, I think, are probably relying on the fact that at the moment, they certainly did in Scotland, that the SNP imploded, and that gives them a way back into Scotland, and relying on the fact that the Tories themselves have imploded. I'm not convinced that's enough. I think you need to set out a bold alternative to convince people to vote for you, and I'm not clear what Labour's bold alternative is. And I don't think they've yet convinced the British public of what their alternative is.
Well, the Tories also got absolutely battered. We're talking less than 4%. We're talking deposit loss territory. How do you think that, well, you are again a Tory. How are you guys feeling today? Are you licking wounds, or do you just think, hey, it's one of those things?
Well, the first thing any Conservative feels today is that they are thrilled that the SNP got smashed and that the union between Scotland and England is safer than it was before. And credit to the Labour Party. They did a good job, and they are a unionist party, and they are to be preferred to the SNP for just those reasons when it comes to a vote in Scotland. So congratulations to them. I've always thought that people are struggling in this country between not having a reason to vote Conservative, and I don't think Rishi gave them the reasons they were looking for last week, I'm afraid.
Don't you? Did you leave that conference feeling
I wasn't there in person, but I didn't feel that he'd set out the vision. And I don't see the coherence of those policies.
And there was no bounce in the polls
that he set out. I don't see that vision that was set out in those policies, and I don't think he sealed the deal. But they haven't, nor have they wanted to vote for Starmer, whom they find dull, changeable, willing to say anything. What I think we see maybe today, the beginning, after the Conservative Party conference, going into the Labour Party conference, great hinge, this election's great hinge between the two, it is just possible that people are starting to tumble onto the Starmer side and saying, we don't really like either of them, but we might give him a chance.
John, one of my viewers, says, we live in Scotland. We are overjoyed. The SNP are on their way out. Yee-haw, he says. That's his exact words. But Steve says, I live in Scotland too, and the Labour win is just a lesser of two evils. He says, I do not think they would get as many seats as projected at the general election, and he has a different view to John. He says the SNP still have a massive following, another John says that he feels that nobody really won. Apathy won. Do you agree with that?
Yeah,
people are just bored of either all of the main parties, or just bored of politics more generally, or what?
I think it's more that... I don't think it's necessarily that people are apathetic about politics. I think they often feel that politicians are apathetic about them, that actually they are... And this was largely, I think, what led to the Brexit vote, where you had millions of people in this country, particularly in what you might call small-town Britain, Britain beyond the fashionable cities and the university towns, post-industrial Britain, blue-collar Britain, who just felt for years that they were unrepresented at the upper echelons of British politics, who, you know, the main parties, particularly during Cameron's time and Blair and Brown, just kind of coalesced around this radically progressive agenda, and ordinary, if you like, small C Conservative people out there, including lots of Labour voters who would regard themselves as small C Conservative, didn't feel that they were represented and didn't feel that anybody spoke for them. So I think when you actually go to these places, especially working class communities, you do actually find people are interested in politics. They do want to play a part in debating politics. They know that politicians make decisions that affect their lives. They want some influence over that. But if you've got a political class that just doesn't listen to you, then it's no wonder that you do probably, you know, dip out of it, because you think, well, what's the point, basically?
And what did you think to Alex Salmond, what he was saying earlier, that he thinks Humza Yousaf basically a couple of days to save his kind of leadership, to demonstrate that he is the right person for the job? Do you agree with that or not?
Well, I don't know. But I mean, Humza Yousaf was put in and got in precisely as Nicola Sturgeon's continuity candidate. He was carrying on the Sturgeon tradition. Alex Salmond, of course, hates that, because he hates everything to do with Nicola Sturgeon, who tried to put him in jail or whatever. I don't know what was going on at the time on all those trials that were going on. So he's always been against Humza Yousaf. I can't say what the Scottish people think of him compared to other people, but he's pursued this Government for Independence programme, whereas I think a huge number of Scots in a cost of living crisis, watching ordinary functions of government fall to pieces around them, would rather have a Scottish government that was sorting out problems rather than campaigning for independence.
Didn't Alex Salmond, am I right in thinking this, didn't he report Rishi Sunak to the police about some comments, apparently jokes that he made about Sturgeon.
I believe that's
at his
the case.
conference. What do you think to that?
Well, anyone is entitled to vote to report anything they like to the police. It's a free country.
It's a free country,
what the
but it's
police do
our
about
country.
it, what the police do about it, is another matter altogether.
Sue says, do not count your chickens, Starmer. You think that people are getting a little bit carried away with themselves. Who's this? Simon says, Michelle. This is, why are people talking about a good victory? Look at the turnout. Again, he says, basically, it feels like all the Labour voters came out, whereas everyone else perhaps stayed at home. Brian says, again, you're talking to me, Michelle, about turnouts at less than 40%. I would suggest that that says that UK politics as a whole basically lost. I always find the turnouts interesting. By-elections, of course, are always traditionally lower than your general election. But what do you make of it all? Yeah, I was looking, actually. Uxbridge, the by-election at Uxbridge was 46%. So that was a little bit higher. But, yeah, anyway, are you still politically motivated? Would you be turning out if there was a by-election in your area? Never say never. They seem to be popping up like I don't know what these days. Anyway, I want to talk to you after the break about what I found such a random thing. The concept that children would now have supervised toothbrushing in primary schools. What do you make of that? Is that really the job of a teacher? What about the parents in all this? You tell me and I'll see you in 2.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7. Alongside me, the Tory life peer in the House of Lords, Daniel Moylan, and the writer and trade unionist, Paul Embry. Shy, you used to say shy Tory, shy Labour. That's what I'm going to start calling you.
Well, you can't really blame me after the last 15
It was almost
years.
distancing himself earlier on when I was talking about Labour. He was saying they're this and they're that. And I was saying, well, don't you mean we, the collective we? And I want to speak about Labour again because Keir Starmer has said that, of course, if he's elected, he wants to introduce supervised toothbrushing into primary schools in England. I've got to say, and I will come to you on this one, there's something about this that makes me uncomfortable. Not because I don't want kids aged 3 to 5 to have decent teeth and I want them all to be like gummy monsters. Of course, that's not what I want. I want their teeth to be in good condition. But I also believe in the role of a parent. Why is it the job of a teacher to supervise a 3 to 5-year-old child brushing their teeth in school? Why hasn't that kid brushed their teeth before they've even left the house to go to school?
Yes, but I don't think that means that they shouldn't or they can't brush their teeth again when they are in school. I mean, I have to say, I completely accept, you know, on the issue of parental responsibility, ultimately responsibility for that sort of thing needs to rest with the parent, just to make sure that the parent needs to make sure the kid has been washed and fed and watered before they go to school and that they're dressed properly. I get all of that. But at the same time, we do teach kids life skills in school, and we teach them about health and we teach them about hygiene. We teach them to wash their hands after they've been to the toilet. We put them through PE lessons because we realise the importance of, and I can see you smirking away there.
I'm
You're not convinced.
Smirking, I'm
but let me finish the point. But so the precedent has been set in terms of teaching kids about health and hygiene. Now, we can take an ideological approach to this, as I suspect you want to do, and say, that's not the job of the state, that's not the job of teachers, that's for the parents. But what would be the consequence of that? The consequence of that would be that you would have even worse oral hygiene amongst kids, particularly in deprived areas where it's worse, and kids' teeth will fall out and kids will get toothache, and that will just increase the burden on an already creaking dentistry service. So whatever the ideological approach, Michelle, you have to look at what the consequences would be. So on balance, I think this is probably a reasonable idea.
Well, you know what? I just think this is a very slippery slope, and I think what you're doing is you're kind of just removing parental responsibility from parents, and basically what you're saying is if you're too burn idle, because let's face it, that's what it is. I've got a 3-year-old, and it's a daily battle to get that child to brush his teeth. It's really, really difficult, and as a parent, when you're perhaps trying to get yourself ready to get out the door as well, it's a challenge, and it is something you can do without, I confess. But that is kind of your job as a parent. Where do you stand on it, Daniel?
Well, let me say, I broadly agree with you, Michelle, but let me just turn the focus for a moment onto the politics of this, because what Paul was saying in an earlier segment was that Labour still hadn't pulled together a vision or a programme for the country that would appeal to the country. And you could see that this is sort of... you can see them doing this badly here, because they want to talk about health policy, that's fair enough, and they decide dentistry is a good thing to focus on because people can't get enough NHS dentists. They want a dentistry policy, and that's fair enough. And then the one bit they put in, they listen to the Royal College of Dentists, and they say you need to supervise the 3-year-olds in the schools. They don't talk to the teachers or ask the teachers' unions if that's actually practical or effective, but they say, no, we'll put that into our dentistry policy. And what's everyone talking about? They're not talking about the role of dentistry in the NHS. They're not talking about how difficult it is to get free dentistry, which is what Labour wants them to be talking about. They're talking about this daft idea, which got in by mistake because they were listening with one ear and not listening with the other. And if they replicate this in terms of developing their policies for the nation, and they end up getting into the wrong place with it like this over and over again, they are going to seriously damage the very strong position they've established with the electorate, as we've seen.
I'm very happy that we've got a Conservative politician who's criticised the Labour leadership for not listening to the trade unions enough. I mean, that's unusual, because normally, you know, yourself...
Well, maybe not for me. I listen to trade unions. I think trade unions have a role to play in representing workers' views.
One of the criticisms of Starmer, and generally any Labour leader, in fact, is that they're in the pocket of the unions. They listen too much to the unions. So I think it's
well, they haven't here. They've listened to
they haven't listened to the unions enough on this. But what I would say in defence of Starmer on this, they can't control the media narrative. So if they come forward with...
Well, they didn't have to say it, did they? They should have talked about
if they come
NHS
forward with a
dentistry.
general programme, which I think is a creditable one, where they're highlighting the major deficiencies within the dentistry service at the moment, the fact that we've got so many people living in pain, the fact that we've got some people who have resorted to DIY dentistry.
Imagine telling Alistair
Then if this is one aspect of it and the media pluck this out, they can't really control that.
Is it the state's job, en masse, to become the parent?
No, but I don't think the state is becoming the parent on this occasion. I think what the state is doing is saying we can supplement good parenting at home, where parents teach their kids how to brush their teeth properly and make sure that they do it. And what harm will it do if we also do that in school and we add to it? I go back to what I say in
Because what message are you sending parents? You're sending parents, you know what, if you can't be bothered to brush your kids' teeth, and you know what, people say, oh, Michelle, there's a cost of living crisis, come off it, a toothbrush is about
I'm with you.
Like,
look, I'm with you.
It's laziness.
I'm with you on
and
that.
And you're condoning, your party is condoning laziness. And if you condone it when it comes to toothbrushing, that narrative will spread, because a parent will sit there and think, I don't need to potty train my kid, school will do it. I don't need to brush my kid's teeth, school will do it. And down and down and down and down, those standards will fall when it comes to lazy parents. And you're condoning that and almost encouraging it.
No, because I don't think this is simply about the state stepping in and becoming the parent. I go back to what I said. You know, we teach kids about good hygiene, we teach them about good health, we make them do PE lessons because it's important that... No one would say, why are you making my kid fit, you know, fitter at school and teaching them about physical education? Because, you know, you're taking on my role as a parent. And I think that a similar principle is brushing children's teeth at school.
Well, look, I'm interested. Are you a teacher at school? Do you actually see this as your job? Because as I understand it, the pressure is on you guys, apparently. Is this what you think you should be doing with your time? I don't know, maybe you think I'm wrong. Richard says this is a sign of things to come if the nanny state gets in. Phil says, Michelle, you'd be horrified. Some kids, they don't brush their teeth, they don't wash, they wear the same clothes week in, week out. Well, then, do you know what? I think, Phil, those parents should be getting a knock on their door, because if you honestly are not responsible enough to wash your own children, then I'm sorry, but I'll be questioning whether or not you should even be parents, quite frankly. Anyway, look, do you know what? Before I get on my high horse, don't even get me started on this topic. That's what I will say. I'm going to bring some of your thoughts in after the break. But also, I want to ask you, should local communities be allowed to ban second home ownership? Yes or no? Don't forget as well, John Cleese, the legend, will be keeping me company before the end of the programme. So if you've got any questions for him, stick them on the email and I'll try and get them to him. I'll see you in 2.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Dewbs and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello for Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock. The Conservative Life peer in the House of Lords, Daniel Moylan, is alongside me, as is the writer and trade unionist Paul Embry. Lots of you guys getting in touch about that last topic, about whether or not it's the teacher's job to get kids to brush their teeth. Charlie on Twitter says, our daughter's teacher used to be a dental nurse and she gave them a toothbrushing lesson just yesterday. They loved using the red dye and seeing whose teeth were the cleanest. And that seems to have resonated. You have sparked a memory in there, actually, with me. I remember having those tablets. What were they called? Like disclosure tablets or something?
Yeah.
And you chewed them.
They would show the plaque up on your teeth.
Yeah. Is that still a thing?
And you used to get a badge when you went to the dentist and if you were a good boy and girl and stuff, didn't you? Remember?
Yeah. Jane, Linda's saying, goodness me, what's going to be next? Teachers having to do potty training. Manjeet says, I taught kids in Japan and the kids had to brush their teeth every day for a short while after their lunch. It was absolutely fine. The kids, the parents and the teachers didn't mind. And they say that their society over there in Japan is much healthier than ours.
Good point.
Stephen's got a good point as well. Michelle, if this is the teacher's job to help these children brush their teeth and the child gets tooth decay, would that be caused by neglect at the school? Could those parents then sue the school? Cool, blimey, opens up a minefield, doesn't it? Let's move on. A village in Norfolk has become the latest tourist hotspot to ban second home ownership. Apparently, the locals complained that the village was left like a ghost town in winter and that locals can't afford to buy or rent in the area. This is not the first time this has happened. Where do you stand on this topic, Daniel?
Well, first of all, they haven't banned second home ownership because they don't have the power to do so, but they're trying to put planning conditions on new homes that are built so that they'd only be available for local people, which you can sort of try and get away with. But my real question is, how many new homes are they actually building? Because very often it's these areas, these sort of areas that don't want outsiders, are the ones who are also not building homes to accommodate demand and even their own demand. So I think the answer to this is not banning people from buying homes, but building more homes in places where people want to live because it's attractive. And that's what they should be doing. And the idea that, oh, you know, these people, oh, they're rich people and they swan in from Norwich, an awful lot of people, the idea of a little cottage by the sea, a little house by the sea or something, is something you could have saved years for to have. Perfectly ordinary people. And the idea that it's all sort of rich millionaires wandering in, they're all bad people, doesn't reflect the reality of our coastal towns and our countryside towns.
What I always find interesting is when these communities are so angry about Londoners moving in or whoever it is, why don't they look inward to their own communities and ask those communities, why are you selling your properties to these second homeowners? So rather than focusing your anger at the people wanting to purchase, surely it's the locals themselves that are trying desperately to get the highest price for their property and thus selling them on.
Well, I think there are all sorts of reasons why somebody is selling a home. You know, they may have retired, they may want to go abroad, they may have had a change of job and need to go to another part of the country. I don't think you can, you know, put the blame on people for selling up. But I have sympathy with these people in these places because the truth is, you said it yourself in the introduction to the item, Michelle, a lot of these places are ghost town in winters. I mean, I've been to some of these places. They are quite desolate places, actually, in winter, but nice places, but there's just nobody there. You drive along a street and all the lights are off because you know they're second homes and there's nobody in those particular in those
Well, it's a
particular
good job
houses.
you're not of a criminal mindset, then, isn't it? Driving out past all of these empty.
Well, that's a legitimate point, and I think I feel for the younger generation in these places as well, because the prices are invariably pushed up because of the demand of people wanting to buy these second homes, and that means that younger people can't get on the ladder. But I think there's a broader point as well about the fact that we do today live in a very kind of fast-moving, globalised world where people and jobs and industries are moving around very, very quickly. And I think that has fragmented community a lot. I think it's atomised a sense of community, and people kind of feel violated by that. And I think there are lots of people around today who do sort of hanker after that old sense of community, that sense of neighbourliness, those common bonds, that sense that we do know our neighbours, and when we walk down the street, we can have conversations with people, those everyday sort of human interactions. So when they see their area changing very rapidly, and people coming in who, don't have any skin in the game in terms of the community, they just use it as a place to kind of hang out at weekends. I think people have got a right to feel a little bit resentful about that, and I don't blame them for it.
Ian says, if you're going to be talking about banning second homes, Michelle, can we start with the 600 plus properties that are owned by MPs? That have these second homes, often paid for by us, the taxpayer. Interesting point there. Yeah, again, Annie, she's saying that she is a regular visitor to Benham Market. She qualifies as well that it is like a ghost town. She backs up what you're saying. Max, again, he's saying the same thing in about Cornwall. He wants a ban on second home ownership, or he wants to treble their council tax. Goodness gracious me. Julia says, Michelle, please, can you stop thinking that everybody is like you? If surely...
God forbid.
I know. Well, I don't know what the world would be like, quite frankly. I'm not sure I'd wish it on any of you if everyone was like me. But anyway, she says sometimes school is the only place that those kids may get their teeth cleaned. So why are you against it? You're saying lack of parenting is a huge issue. Well, I would say to that, but there shouldn't be such a thing as lack of parenting. If you're not prepared to parent your children, I would question whether or not those children should be remaining in your custody. And I say that regrettably as a child that I myself was on the social services at-risk register when I was at school. So I do know a little thing or two about of which I speak. Anyway, let's move on, because Dewberry Tavern is about to open. And this time, yes, these two guys are fascinating, but I've got an absolute legend keeping me company as well. None other than the man, the legend, John Cleese. See you in 2.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company till 7 o'clock, the Conservative Live Peer in the House of Lords, Daniel Moylan, alongside me, as is the writer and trade unionist Paul Embry. You know the drill on a Friday. Dewberry Tavern opens, so cheers to you. It is the start of the weekend.
Cheers.
But I need to do a second cheers because I have an additional guest alongside me. Not only is he an additional guest, is a new face on this programme, he has also had the most glamorous choice of drink that anyone has ever selected when the Dewberry Tavern has ever been opened. If you look at that, John Cleese, welcome. Describe to the viewers what it is that you're drinking.
It's a margarita, but it's made not with tequila, but with mezcal, which is a slightly smoky kind of tequila, and it's the best taste.
Well, cheers to that.
Well, I'm very touched because I saw Andrew Doyle yesterday for dinner.
Cheers.
And I ordered this, and when I got to the studio, I was given it. I thought that was very thoughtful.
And how many marks out of 10 would you give the producer that's made that for you tonight? Always thinking about it.
We're talking about 8.5, I think.
8.5. Well, there you go. Whoever made that, if it all goes wrong...
You can tell he's an esteemed guest, because we get a pint of lager.
Yeah, they get a pint.
What's this thing about choice and offer?
I know, they just get... Well, I know. Let's move on. Let's get a hold of this before
You
the
have to
wheels
have dinner
fall
with
off.
the producer the night before.
Well, we haven't been invited.
Sir, John Cleese, the reason that you are keeping me company tonight is not just for the free margarita, but you are, of course, joining the GB News family.
I am.
The Dinosaur Hour is your programme.
Yes, that's
tell us more.
Richard, well, they came to me a few months ago and they made me the most extraordinary offer that's ever been made to anyone in the history of television.
Right.
They said, would you like to do 10 shows? You can do whatever you like. Can you imagine the BBC doing that?
No, I cannot.
Well, they say, well, subject to the Committee A, and then after Committee A have approved it, you go to Committee... They said you can do anything, and I had no interference of any kind. It's been joyful. And I've been able to do one or two things I wanted to try on television.
Like what? Can you give us any hints?
Well, one of them is this kind of setup. I mean, this is now the standard setup for television. And it's good for this programme. But for a lot of programmes, you want something a bit different. So I've got people sitting in armchairs talking to each other much closer, because if you and I are talking like this, it becomes more interesting and intimate than if I'm back here sort of slightly shouting at you.
It does.
But this is the sort of thing that designers don't understand, because designers, as you know, well, they become designers basically because they can't read. And
but your
that's
set...
why there's no signage in hotels. That's why, because designers don't like signage.
Your set is a castle, actually.
Yes.
If I am led to
it's
believe
insane.
correctly.
It's a huge castle that was built, I think it was 1266 it was built. No, maybe it was 1166, because King John was involved. But they found a wonderful room there, and they set it up as a sort of slightly lunatic gentleman's club, and we have a lot of cats on the programme.
Gentleman's club in the castle. Are women allowed in?
Oh, yes.
Oh, he's a bit too excited by that prospect.
No, we got lots. We got 3 nuns.
Oh, have you now? Interesting. And how has it been becoming part of the GB News family? Good experience?
Well, they're a very nice bunch. I've never worked with a nicer team, I mean that.
Have you got your fingers crossed? Your legs are not crossed? I can vouch for that.
It's a lovely atmosphere out there, because I think humans are much happier when they're working in smaller groups. And when it gets vast, you go to the BBC now, these vast buildings. Nobody seems to know who anyone is, you know what I mean? And it's much more personal here because everybody knows everyone. If you want to join an organisation, join them at the beginning.
Yes.
Because that's when everyone knows what's going on. And then as it gets bigger and departmentalised, it becomes less personal.
So when can viewers catch your programme then? When's it going to be aired?
I think it's Sunday, the 29th of October.
What time?
9 o'clock.
Good.
Just so we can use bad language.
I knew the answers to that, by the way, so I was pleased that you did too, because that is good. You passed the first test. And listen, you are not slowing down at all, because it is not just GB News and the Dinosaur Hour that you're doing, which I cannot wait. I've had a sneak preview as to who some of the guests are, which we're not mentioning on this programme tonight. We're going to keep it a secret. Those details will follow imminently. But I've seen the cast list, and it's fabulous, so I'll definitely be watching.
And it's slightly odd, which I like very much, because it means we're not taking ourselves too seriously, you know.
Oh, well, if you want to know who is on John's programme, Sunday at 7 o'clock, that is when we will be unveiling. No.
What?
I'm saying that you're
unveiling.
talking
about the one next week, yes.
We're unveiling your guests at 7.
This Sunday.
And then you will be unleashed at 9 o'clock to the nation the following Sunday.
2 days after my 84th birthday.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, it's my birthday on Monday, actually.
Really? Oh,
yes. Yeah. I digress, though, because you
So wait a moment. Are you a Libra or a Scorpio?
Libra.
Oh, yeah.
Not a very balanced one, though, I must confess. I think something has gone wrong there in my wiring.
Very unbalanced.
Yeah, I do. So you say that you're approaching 84 and you are absolutely not slowing down. So Dinosaur Hour we've just been talking about. And I want to show you one of the funniest clips of your previous work that I think I've ever seen. Let me remind my viewers of this, what I would say, hilarious moment.
I want to be a woman. From now on, I want you all to call me Loretta. What? It's my right as a man.
Well, why do you want to be Loretta, Stan?
I want to have babies.
You want to have babies?
It's every man's right to have babies if he wants them.
But you can't have babies.
Don't you oppress me.
I'm not oppressing you, Stan. You haven't got a womb. Where's the fetus going to gestate? You're going to keep it in a box?
See, I find that hilarious. And John, I don't know if the microphones was up there, but John was also laughing. And this is the thing, I find that hilarious. That is, of course,
the life of Brian. And you know it was written in 1987.
I thought it was early.
No, 77.
Yeah,
77.
I was going to say, I thought it was early. I've done my research.
45 years ago, so it was pretty prescient, wasn't it?
And you're bringing Life of Brian back as a stage play.
As a stage show. I've been working on it today.
And what I find quite interesting is that scene that I've just played there. As I understand it, a couple of actors have said when they was reading the scripts that they were not massively comfortable with that scene.
Well, it was worse than that. We had a read-through in New York with some very good, very distinguished actors who'd won Tonys and all this kind of thing. And at the end of the read-through, they said, it's a wonderful script, but you can't do that. And I said, what do you mean we can't do that? They said, you won't get away with it. And I said, well, what's going to happen? Are they going to burn the theatre down? And we are going to do it.
Oh, so that is in that scene.
Yes. It was only a bit of misreporting because no one in British journalism checks it, I think.
Details. Well, I'm on my brief. I've got the details, so that's good. So we can confirm that Loretta, Loretta, that
and
is
you
still
know why she was called Loretta?
Why?
Marty Feldman's wife.
Ah, right. Well, Loretta, I love that scene. What about the crucifixion at the end?
Yes.
Is that still going to be there? Or?
I don't think so. I don't think we should do that because we did it 45 years ago and it was very, very shocking and funny. But 45 years later, it doesn't carry exactly the same punch. So I decided that I ought to try and change it. Michael Palin said to me, don't. He said our audience would expect it. And I said, Michael, what was the last time that Python did what their audience expected?
Well, that is a very interesting point. And Fawlty Towers, lots of people have contacted us about Fawlty Towers. You're also bringing that back as well.
Well, my daughter and I have started writing that, but it's only a glint in the eye. Unfortunately, they made a sort of press release much, much too early, so everyone got excited about it before it really existed.
This is your daughter Camilla?
Yes, that's right.
All right, so
she's a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, I was reading about you and saying about how much fun you was having writing it together with there was someone else involved as well. So we're not having new Fawlty Towers?
Yes, you are.
Oh, we are?
It'll be set probably in the Caribbean, and we'll be making it probably in a year's time at most. Maybe we'll do the pilot before that. In the meantime, we're doing a musical of Fish Called Wanda and Life of Brian, and Camilla and I have written a very funny film script which we think we're going to make, which is called Lookalikes, and it's all about the Hollywood lookalikes. But the lookalikes are played by the original stars.
Right.
So that Arnold Schwarzenegger is playing his own lookalike.
Right.
And keeps hurting himself.
Is Basil still a hotelier in the...
Well, no, he sold the hotel, I think.
Okay.
My daughter and I are still arguing, but I think he sold the hotel and has come to live with his daughter.
Right.
I mean, I've got to say...
Divorced from Sybil, presumably.
What?
Divorced from Sybil.
Well, yes. Well, I think it's funnier if she's dead.
Clive...
Otherwise, she'll be around. You know what I mean?
One of my
and
viewers...
if Camilla's mother in the show is somebody different, then she can turn up later, which just gives us more comic possibilities.
Well, one of my viewers, Clive, I mean, lots of viewers have written and asking about the new Fawlty Towers, so you guys have had your question answered there. Clive says, what's John's opinion on the PC Brigade, he calls it, going after some of your back catalogue? He's mentioning Fawlty Towers as well.
I think there's a good part to woke and a bad part.
What's the good part?
The good part is that it's a good idea to be kind and nice to people. And some people think that's all it is. And there's also quite a threatening side, almost a totalitarian side. I mean, I want to discuss woke issues on the program I just made on the Dinosaur Hour. And we couldn't get people on because they would say, one woman said, even to discuss it it's wrong even to discuss it. In other words, they just want us to accept all their ideas and they're not prepared to discuss them.
Do you think, can I just ask, John, do you think that Fawlty Towers, if it were written today, particularly the episode about that classic episode with the Germans, for example...
Yes, but there's no problem with
Would that be commissioned today, do you think?
Probably not. No, because it would go from committee to committee to committee at the BBC and somebody would object to it. So, because it's all their strength comes in their ability to get people fired. And one university professor from Oregon told me that more people have been fired during the woke period than were fired during McCarthyism in the 50s. And they go after people, and an awful lot of people are very, very scared of them, which is why people with higher profile have to discuss it, but they're not frightened of getting fired. Most people are very frightened of getting fired, and the people who employ them are frightened of getting fired. And then that end of woke is not very nice. And it's also psychologically unsound, because young people suffer so much now with anxiety and depression. And the very therapies that work best, the cognitive behavioral therapy, which is really helping young people, is the opposite principles that are laid out by the woke extremists. It's harmful in those cases.
Daryl says, do you agree that the smallest minority is the individual? Deep and meaningful questions on Dewbs. What can I say?
I don't know how to say that. It's rather interesting, and yes.
There you go. Daryl, interesting question, but he says yes. Bruce says, can you ask John Cleese why he told Douglas Adams that 42 was the funniest number?
Well, it is the funniest number.
Why?
Well, Graham Chapman and I, when we were at Cambridge, we wrote a parody of a sermon, a Church of England sermon, and at the end, out of the blue, the vicar says, hymn 42. And Graham and I argued for a long time about which was the funnier number, but there's something about the number 42. And then Douglas Adams used it in Hitchhiker.
Well, there you go. And you see, it is indeed making him chuckle. I'm trying to whiz through as many of your viewer questions. Eric says, if you were ever going to found a political party, what would you call it?
Silly party.
The silly party. Well, there you go. Wendy says, what's your opinion on the current state of the comedy scene, given the current culture we seem to be living in?
Well, I think it's very sad that the BBC 1990s produced, I was reading the list the other day, 31 really good comedies were on the BBC during that period of 10 years. And they were all good, you know? And now the comedy, and I don't know because I don't watch much television anymore, but I ask a lot of friends, and cab drivers and all that lot, and they all say there's nothing funny on. And it's because the people in charge have no idea how to control comedy, or rather, they have no idea how to nurture it because they try to control it because they think they know what they're doing. And my experience, many years in TV, is that the executives very, very seldom know what they're doing. But it didn't matter in the old days because they allowed the talented people to get on with it. And then, as Griff Rhys-Jones wrote about 20 years ago, then they themselves, the executives, wanted to become the stars. And that's when all the creativity went downhill.
Very quickly, because look at time flies, doesn't it, when you're having fun. Colin says, what comedy has most influenced you?
Goon Show.
Yeah, there you go. Kitty says, Michelle, this is not a question, but please can you tell Mr. Cleese thank you so much for all of the laughs that he has brought all of us all over the years.
I've made an extraordinarily valuable contribution to
modest.
this
Look
civilization.
at not only the most sophisticated drinker, but also one of the most modest men I've ever had on my panel. By the way, we can't finish
I'm
because
proud of my modesty.
time is almost gone. But before we go, can you just give a shout out to Paul Embry's young son, who is a massive fan of yours, is watching tonight.
Nick, I'm delighted that and please tell all your friends because all the young people don't know about Monty
Oh, well, his
Python.
son does.
No, but they don't. When we did the show at the O2 and parents took their children, the children said, this is funny, why didn't we not know about it? And the answer is because the BBC haven't put it out for over 20 years.
Well, there you go. Bring it all
It's
back.
compulsory in my house.
Quite right.
Well, look,
I think to make something that gets families laughing together is great.
Every good pub has strict closing times, and mine is no different. So very sadly, that is all we've got time for. Thank you to the team. You can't see what he's doing next to me. Thank you. I am off next week, everybody. I'll see you the following week. Have a good one, and thank you to the man, to the legend. Have a good weekend. I don't know what he's doing. No idea. Goodbye.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in My Big Opinion, my first on-air reaction to Rishi Sunak's conference speech, compared to the one I wrote for him earlier in the week. In my Take a 10, football legend Kevin Keegan is the latest victim of the woke mob for saying men should commentate on men's football. It's time to show those attacking him.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.